After studying this module, you shall be able to know how to produce watermarks in a paper. You will be able to identify the forgeries involved in watermark. You will be able to analyze the watermark forgeries. The watermark can be embedded in the document by two methods, either by manually or by digitalization of the documents. The document in which the watermark is to be embedded is prepared like that. The watermark in paper is embedded in the paper during its production process. Similarly, when a watermark is to be embedded in the audio or video file, then it should be done while the audio or video file is being produced or made. The production of watermark in the digital documents perform the same function as the production of watermarks in the papers too. The watermarks or digital signatures provide the genuineness to the documents and quality of paper. The digitalization of a file or a document is also done to code a message which can only be seen by the receiver, having the specific key to decode that code in the message to read the particular file being sent to him with encryption. The watermarks and other digital signs, either in the form of signatures, increases or decreases brightness in a video file, alter a specific period of time, can help us to get the following information. The origin of the paper or the file can be determined. To determine the manufacturer of the paper or file, the date of the manufacturing can also be determined. The technology involved in the dating of the paper or file by the watermark is dependent on the technology being used for the production of that watermark or digital specifications.
The introduction of rigid iron fires in the molds of European paper makers naturally led to the development of the first watermark. In Italy, in 1882, the first use of watermarks occurred. They were simple in design and were incorporated as part of the metal lead mold. The wirework in the form of objects or words was laced to the surface of the mold and created images in the paper. It is believed that the early watermarks were the signs or symbols that conveyed meaning among the workers who made them or among those who used the paper in which the outlines occurred. Much like advertising, paper manufacturers were proud of their product, and watermarking provided a method for identifying their hard work. Watermarking of paper during manufacture on a Fodariner paper machine is accomplished by the use of dandy rolls, which can have either a raised or a depressed design corresponding to the design style of the watermark. The dandy rolls is rotated above the moving wire and comes into contact with the wet sheet. The design is impressed into the fiber mat while the paper is still about 90% water. If the dandy roll contains a raised design or say wire mark, the watermark will appear lighter than the rest of the sheet. If the dandy roll contains a depressed region or say shaded watermark, the watermark will appear darker than the rest of the sheet of the paper. The appearance of the watermark, whether lighter or darker, is not the result of the thickness of the paper, but the result of the concentration or density of the fibers caused by the design of the dandy rolls and its effect on the specific areas. The raised design disperses the fibers in the web, while the shaded design concentrates the fibers in the area of the design. In contrast to the Fordiner's process, watermarks can be produced by a cylinder paper machine. This type of machine makes paper by partially immersing rotating cylinders in vats of pulp stock. In this process, the paper forms into a sheet on wire covered cylinders or molds as the water drains through, leaving the fibers on the cylinder surface. The cylinder molds watermarks produce varying densities of the paper fibers and result in the high quality images and portraits that are used in the security paper for currencies and other security documents throughout the world. The watermarks can also be forged, and even the digital signature can be forged. The development of softwares and computers has made it possible to forge the digital signatures, although the forgery made can be detected easily by application of some softwares in digitalized documents and by the application of the knowledge we have in the production of watermark. The watermark is generally copied in the currency notes, which are highly require expertise and focus. The most common example of watermark copying is the counterfeit currency, because this crime industry has grown up in the years and is also using the latest technologies available to simulate the original currency note. The other most common example of cases which we came across in the world of documentation is the forgery of digital certificates and agreement. This is again done with the motive to gain the profit on the account of other. The production of watermark and digital watermark. The watermark production is not just a one-step method, as told already in the introduction part about the utilities and production of watermark, which can be done in a paper only at the time of production of paper. The following steps helps in the production of watermark. First is the watermark are produced by a pattern bearing roll, which may be made of a brass wire or a metal plate on the dandy roll. Second, the paper which is used for the watermark production is of high quality, and thus the thickness of the paper should be reasonably thick, because the portion in which watermark is embedded becomes thin. Next is the watermark to be produced is either by slaughtered directly on the dandy roll, which presses against the paper, or cylinder mold may itself be covered with a mash bearing watermark. At the time of manufacture, the fibers of the paper are spread apart and the watermark is impinged in it. Due to this spreading of the paper fibers apart, the paper becomes thin. Next, once the watermark is embedded in the paper is being sized as required, dried, and calendared. After following all these steps, the watermark becomes permanent in the paper. Next is the steps in production of digital signatures. First, click on the Use the Certificate option for producing the digital signature. Then click on the option of Drag New Signature for production of digital signature. It will be achieved. Next, we select the option of New Digital ID to be created. Now, there is the option of Orthodox PKC hash 12 ID digital ID file or the other Windows certificate store. Then click on the Windows certificate store and then all the details are filled. After clicking on the sign option given, the digital signatures are produced. Then digitally produced signature becomes visible. Next is forgery and its detection in cases of watermark and digital signatures. The different ways of detecting the forgery produced in the watermark of paper is produced manually. The detection of forgery in the watermarks produced in the paper can be detected by some of the marks which are produced by mechanism of watermark production like the lead marks which are more or less produced in the same manner as the watermarks, but the difference is that the dandy rolls is covered with wires at regular intervals. Comparison of the wire marks can also be used to differentiate two papers from each other. These marks are produced in the paper by impression of the wire. Forgery may also be done by simulating a watermark. This simulation, of course, cannot be the same extent as in the original document, so it can be detected easily. The artificial watermark produced shows high thickness in the area where the watermark is placed on the paper because the thinniness of the paper in the area of the watermark is produced during its manufacturing and hence it cannot be forged with that much ease. Some forgers still try to forge this particular characteristic of the watermark produced in the paper and try to make the area of the paper thin which contains the watermark. This thinning of the paper can be caused by the use of strong acid in the appropriate area to make the paper comparatively thinner, and sometimes a watermark can also be made by applying small amount of the oil or grease on a metal block and pressing it on the paper. In the case mentioned in the above point, the forgery can be detected by treating the area with dilute caustic solution, which will make the artificial watermark to obliterate or to become dim. Next is detection of forgery in the digital signatures. When any person who is not authorized to open or to make changes in the document opens it and make any changes to the documents, then it will be shown by dialog box which will show the change in the date. So, along with all other circumstantial evidences like whether the owner has opened the document on the particular day or not, or was unable to open up the document due to some reason, and if the suspect was in status to reach the system in which the particular file was stored or not should be considered. A common method of determining the source of paper and its possible time of manufacture involves the watermark found in better grades of writing, typing, and computer printing papers. Today, only a few of these watermarks include a dating code that allows the manufacturer to determine the year in which the paper was made. Records are generally placed on the market, although most brands have been sold for a number of years. Documents have been dated or the dates proven fraudulent by changes in the design of the watermark or by the defects developed over the time in the watermark. Dondi rules here again. Success depends on the accuracy of the plant records. Since the watermark can be displayed in scans and photographs, the dating information can be demonstrated effectively to all concerned. The value of watermark as a means of determining the date of paper, books, and document is worth noting. Watermarks should generally be examined and documented using transmitted light. In the event that a document contains images or text that severely interfere with the visualization of the watermark, a soft X-ray may be taken of the document. A soft X-ray will produce an image of the density of the paper fibers, revealing a clear picture of the watermark that is distinct from the printed text or images. Watermarks are commonly imitated by printing an image in an opaque ink on the surface or a light color such as gray on the reverse of a document. It should be noted that chemical watermarks also may be used to mimic genuine watermarks by introducing a transparentizing agent onto the finished paper product to stimulate a conventional watermark. Using a combination of oblique, transmitted, and ultraviolet light sources should allow an forensic document examiner to distinguish between true watermarks and their simulations. The origins and manufacturers of true watermarks can be identified and assist in dating or identification of the source of paper. The specific features of a watermark, such as the design, letter style, arrangement of text, and wording size, terminology, and arbitrary marks, can be used to specifically date paper. Information about a specific design may be obtained, including the first date of production and the date of consumer availability, the extent of its use, its production history, and distributors of the paper is given that area. Sources for this information include the paper manufacturers and industry publication such as Weldon's paper catalog, Lockwood's post directory, and Phillips' paper directory.
Let us summarize what we have learned in this module. The watermarks can be embedded in the document by two methods, either by manually or by digitalization of the document. The document in which watermark is to be embedded is prepared like that. The watermark in the paper embedded in the paper during its formation. The watermark and other digital signs, either in the form of signature, increases or decreases in brightness in a video file or alter the specific period of time, can help us to get the following information. That is, the origin of the paper or the file can be determined. To determine the manufacturer of the paper or file, the date of manufacturing can also be determined. The technology involved in the dating of the paper or file by the watermark is dependent on the technology being used for the production of that watermark or digital specification. This thinning of the paper can be caused by use of some strong acid in the appropriate area to make the paper comparatively thinner, and sometimes a watermark can also be made by applying some amount of oil or grease on a metal block and pressing it to the paper.